When we married, I never imagined my life would take the turn it did. Emily and I were young, full of hope and promises. We dreamed of growing old together, raising a family, building a life that would stand the test of time. But dreams have a way of fading, and promises, well, promises are only as strong as the people who keep them. It had been 3 years since our divorce. 3 years since I'd packed my things and walked out the door, leaving behind the woman I thought I'd spend forever with. Our marriage hadn't crumbled in one catastrophic moment. It eroded slowly, like sand slipping through my fingers. We argued more, communicated less, and drifted into separate orbits. And then one day, I found the evidence. A string of messages on her phone from someone named Jake. They weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. The playful tone, the inside jokes, the lingering affection in every word. It was clear she had let someone else into the space that once belonged to me. When I confronted her, she denied it. She swore it was just a friend, that I was reading too much into it. But the truth was there, plain as day, and her attempts to downplay it only fueled my anger. Eventually, she admitted it. Yes, she had been seeing Jake. Yes, it had gone on for months. I left that day. I couldn't stay, couldn't live in the shadow of her betrayal. The divorce was messy, filled with tears and arguments, but in the end, we reached a settlement. She kept the house. I started over in a 1-bedroom apartment. For years, I thought I'd never set foot in that house again. It wasn't just a home, it was a reminder of everything I'd lost. But life has a way of forcing us to face the things we'd rather avoid. When Emily called me out of the blue, I wasn't sure what to think. Her voice trembled as she asked if I could stop by. "It's about our daughter," she said. "I need to talk to you in person." Our daughter, Lily, was 8 now. She lived with Emily most of the time, but we had joint custody, and I saw her every weekend. I didn't want to go back to that house, but for Lily's sake, I agreed. When I pulled into the driveway, my heart pounded. The house looked the same as it had the day I left, but it felt different, almost unrecognizable. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Emily opened it, looking pale and drawn. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly. I stepped inside, the familiar smell of her lavender candles hitting me like a wave. Memories rushed back, family dinners, movie nights, lazy Sunday mornings. I pushed them aside and focused on the present. "What's going on?" I asked. She motioned toward the kitchen. "Let's sit down." I followed her to the table and sat across from her. She fidgeted with her hands, a nervous habit I remembered all too well. "Lily's been asking questions," she said finally. "About us. About why we're not together anymore." I nodded. That's normal at her age. She wants to understand. "It's not just that," Emily said, her voice trembling. She asked about Jake. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. "What did you tell her?" "I told her he was a friend," Emily said quickly. I didn't go into details. "But she's not a little kid anymore, John. She's starting to pick up on things. She's heard people talk. I don't know how much she knows, but I don't want her to hate me." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what she was saying. "So you called me here to, what? Help you explain your affair to our daughter?" "No," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I called you here because I don't know what to do. I've been carrying this guilt for years, and now it's affecting Lily. I can't keep lying to her, but I don't know how to tell her the truth without destroying her image of me." I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. This was the woman I'd loved, the mother of my child, and yet here we were, sitting in the ruins of our marriage, trying to figure out how to clean up the mess she'd made. "She deserves to know the truth," I said finally. "Maybe not every detail, but enough so she understands why things are the way they are." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know you're right. But it's hard. I don't want her to hate me, John. I don't want her to think I'm a bad person." I sighed. "What she needs is honesty. She needs to know that people make mistakes, but that doesn't mean you don't love her. You're her mother. You'll always be her mother. But lying to her won't protect her, it'll only confuse her more." Emily wiped her eyes and nodded again. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll tell her." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation pressing down on both of us. I couldn't fix what had happened between us, but I could at least help her find a way to be honest with Lily. When I left that house, I felt a strange sense of closure. I hadn't forgiven Emily, not completely. But I realized that our past didn't have to define our future. We were no longer husband and wife, but we were still Lily's parents, and that was something worth holding on to. It took Emily a few days to gather the courage, but eventually, she sat down with Lily. I wasn't there for the conversation. She said she needed to do it on her own. That evening, she called me. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the exhaustion behind it. I told her, she said simply. I didn't go into too much detail, but I told her I made a mistake, and that it hurt our family. What did she say? I asked, gripping the phone tightly. She cried, Emily admitted. She asked if I still loved her, and I told her that I love her more than anything in the world. She asked why we couldn't all be together again, and I said it's because I made choices that broke our family apart. She paused, and I could hear her swallow hard. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. How did she take it? She's upset, Emily said quietly. But she didn't scream or run away. She just listened. I think she's trying to process it all. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That's all you can do. Be honest. Let her feel what she needs to feel. She'll come to terms with it in her own time. After that call, something shifted. Emily stopped trying to win me back. She seemed to understand that we were never going to be what we once were. Instead, we focused on Lily, on giving her stability, even if it wasn't the traditional kind. Over time, Lily stopped asking as many questions. She adjusted to our new normal, splitting her time between Emily's house and mine. I made sure that my home was a place where she felt safe and loved, and Emily did the same. We weren't friends, but we were civil. We communicated about school projects, extracurricular activities, and birthdays. As the years went by, I started to heal. I realized that I didn't need Emily's apology to move on. I didn't need her to explain why she made the choices she did. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how it shaped my future. Eventually, I met someone new. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was quiet, steady, and built on trust. I took things slow, unsure if I could let my guard down again. But she was patient, kind, and honest in a way that made me believe I could start over. When I introduced her to Lily, I was nervous, but Lily warmed to her quickly. She was happy to see me happy, and that was all that mattered. Emily and I never talked about Jake again. He had become a shadow of the past, someone who no longer mattered. The life I built after the divorce was mine, free of secrets, free of lies. Looking back, I see that Emily's betrayal, as painful as it was, taught me something important, that love alone isn't enough. It takes trust, honesty, and respect. Without those things, a relationship will crumble under its own weight. Today, I can stand in the house I share with my new partner and feel peace. I can look at Lily and know she's growing up in an environment where love is real, not just something people say. I can look back on the past without bitterness, because it led me to where I am now, a place of happiness, freedom, and the kind of love I always deserved.